Hello, everyone. This is Chris Shepard, and welcome back to ChatJSB. We are accumulating quite a library now, but what's really nice about today's is that we're hearkening back to the first ChatJSB, the summer before the complete Bach began, because I began with Pam Dalal, because she has been such an institution at Emmanuel Music for so long, and she has provided all of the extraordinary translations that we use for the project. And today we return to Emmanuel Music with the artistic director, conductor, tenor, a wonderful voice teacher. I have known Ryan as that for many years now. This is Ryan Turner, and Ryan, welcome to ChatJSB.
Hi, Chris. Good to be here.
It's good to see you. So the timing of this is so that we can foreshadow and announce this wonderful concert of three solo cantatas by Bach, 60, 158, and 199. And that is Saturday, February 21st at Assumption College, their beautiful, quite new performance space. So there's that, but really we're talking with you because you are one of the handful of people. And I was thinking about this, Ryan. It couldn't be more than, 20 would be, I think, a pretty outside figure of the people who have conducted every single one of Bach's cantatas, which is really amazing. As I've said many times, Emmanuel Music has been doing this every Sunday for more than 50 years. You've been doing it as artistic director for 16, 17
Yeah,
years?
this is my 16th season.
Congratulations. That is fantastic. Can I start with that? And then I'm going to backfill and ask how this Texas boy ended up doing all this Bach and landing in Boston. But first, what is it like? Did you notice the day that you finished the cycle? Were you keeping close track of it?
Well, I was. In fact, I probably would have finished sooner if it weren't for that stinky pandemic we had that
Oh God, of
slowed everything
course.
up. But it was in the, what was it, 2022, I think. It was in the spring of 2022 that we finished, and they actually had a little reception and little congratulatory
As they should.
presentation for having finished the complete cycle.
What was the last one? Do you remember?
Yeah, I do remember. And it was one that we kind of had to shoehorn in, Cantata 194, which was really a wedding cantata.
Oh yes, the Hawk
Yes,
something or other.
yes, exactly. And so we kind of made it work for the final service of the year. Emmanuel Music's in residence for September to mid-May. So our last cantata of the season, we shoehorned it in, and it's a lengthy one. It's
Yes.
and it's in the sort of galant style, and it's a little bit long-winded, but thoroughly exciting at the same time.
That
Yeah.
reminds me, it's crazy. I should know this. Do you try to match liturgical date to the cantata as much as possible?
Yeah, that's a that's a deep and thorny question. Of course,
Next
because
question.
as Bach was working in this yearly lectionary cycle of 18th century Saxony Lutheran Church. And now, at Emmanuel being an Anglican church, we're working in the Revised Common Lectionary, which is a 3-year cycle of readings. And because we're not in residency from mid-May to mid-September, there's a whole body of
All the Trinity
cantatas.
Sundays, yeah.
So what we're often doing is finding a way that the cantatas are in dialogue with the readings of the day, or there are even times like I remember in Lent doing a cantata for the Sunday after Christmas because the readings were in dialogue with what we were doing. So sometimes we get what I call a direct hit where it works really well. Other times, we're making connections, and Pam Werntz, our rector, is fantastic at, you know, sort of sewing the thread together and making things work in her
Yeah,
sermon.
which is very cool. Did you? So you would have inherited. I won't talk about Craig Smith this time because Pam Dalal and I talked
Oh,
about him
feel
so
free.
much, and of course, it's such an extraordinary legacy that he left. How much have you built on his schedule, or do you try to mix it up as much as possible?
I built nothing on his schedule. In fact, I don't, to be honest, I have no documents of if he had a sort of common a rota, a rotation, as it
Yep,
were.
yep.
Um, I use that fantastic Melvin Unger text that has all the biblical references in every single cantata, along with looking at the Revised Common Lectionary, and I've got my own chart, and over the years I've figured out what works, and spreadsheets galore, figuring out what works this Sunday, what doesn't. And usually in mid-May, I start to piece it together for the next year.
Yeah.
And
It,
then, of course, there's the financial part of it too.
oh yes, that I am a big fan of reminding people that the documents that we have from Bach are less about music and much more about finances. And so there's
Isn't that true?
we do not need to be embarrassed.
The only
Yeah,
difference is we don't pay our bassoon player in beer. He'd
might
probably like
appreciate
it.
it.
That's right.
And do you have a way? So these three cantatas that you guys are going to come and perform, and this I should tell our viewers that Ryan was one, may have been actually Ryan. You might have been the first person that I talked to when we were just in the very planning stages before I had even gone with this crazy idea to the Music Worcester board. I wanted to have some really high powered partners, and of course, Emmanuel Music would be it. And I will always be so grateful. You didn't even bat an eye. You were absolutely loved the idea. You and Kathy Gagney at Mechanics Hall, and you were the orchestra and soloists for our kickoff B minor mass. But one of the things that's most important about Emmanuel Music is that these solo cantatas, they're difficult. They require really top tier singers and players. And you guys are used to doing them. So I have asked you in particular to be the resource for those. How do you work those into your Sunday schedule, just as they come up?
As they come up, I mean, this year was a unique year because we knew we were going to be doing these three cantatas. And so 199, Mein Herz schwimmt in Blut, which is just I mean, it's a behemoth piece for soprano, even for the orchestra. There are a lot of decisions to be made and a lot of coordination involved, as you probably know. So that we did in the fall, and then actually just this past weekend we did Cantata 60. Now, of course, the personnel changes, so there's not the commonality there, but at least we'd had a go at them, and I fit them into the liturgy as best as possible to make
Did
it work.
any did any soprano try to slip you money as a bribe to get to do 199?
Right, good. No, I kept it very quiet until I'd chosen my soprano.
This is and people will see and what's really interesting is Kevin Days just sang 82 Ich habe genug with us. And these and in the fall Simona Dinnerstein had come, very good friend of yours and
Yeah,
Emmanuel Music. They presented 169. So these are perhaps the three, and then throw in 51, Jachset Gott.
yeah.
These four might be the solo cantatas of record that every Bach singer wants to be able to sing. Can you talk a bit about 199? And because it is such an outlier in Bach's
It
repertoire.
is an outlier, and I think also to your point about every singer wanting to do these pieces, there's also, at least in the Emmanuel history, is of course we're all beholden in a very positive way to those rich recordings that Lorraine Hunt Lieberson did with Craig Smith. And I remember being in the audience seeing the Peter Sellers staging
Oh, wow.
of Mein Herz schwimmt in Blut with Lorraine Hunt Lieberson and the Emmanuel Orchestra at the when it was the Emerson Majestic Theater. Um, so, those are and if you listen to those recordings, which the orchestra just plays beautifully, um, and so many of the musical decisions are born out of staging decisions.
Oh, interesting.
So, and I think a lot of listeners aren't necessarily aware of what the process was that led them to the recording. The recording came after a tour of these staged cantatas all over Europe and having done it in America, and then they recorded all these musical decisions born out of what happened on stage, which was very interesting. Um, but yeah, I mean, what a sort of psychological journey that this piece is for the soprano, or in Lorraine's case, as a high mezzo in the lower key. Yeah, stunning piece, stunning psychological journey, and a way that somehow at the end that wonderful jig, it's just like they're floating off to heaven and dancing away. It's amazing.
Which is funny because for our audience members who are watching this, who saw Kevin to 82, it's a similar thing. And Bach, I think that I mean, you're the one to talk about this because you've done them all now. But it is interesting how many of the cantatas, the shape is that it starts either in agony or angst
Hmm.
or anxiety and finishes in that glorious glimpse of heaven.
Yeah, there really is the sort of the drama of the believer, whoever's singing this, starting out with the complete, almost self-flagellation of how awful a human I am, to the point of acceptance of death, and that this is indeed, especially in 18th century Lutheranism, what there is nothing greater than death, and ascending to heaven and being in that place of Eden. And to hear the singer work through that transition and that struggle to the point of, my heart swims in blood, I'm an awful human being, I'm sinful too, nothing could be better than going to heaven.
It's kind of a hard message to sell in
Indeed.
21st century America. Yeah, it is. And I think that so often I think that people just let the music wash over them rather than engage with the text because the
Yeah.
text is so foreign now. And yet, I mean, that is what Bach was saying. Uh, Ryan, I've not done 199, and it just occurred to me. Do we think that it was like all of them written for a boy treble?
Oh, I think it's highly unlikely that this was written for a boy treble. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, this one comes later um, in his cantata cycle, and I think it was probably written for a specific, might have been a burial service or a
Oh,
funeral or memorial or something, where he was sort of emancipated from the stricture of liturgy, where
yep,
they couldn't use
yep.
women. I think we think it was more than likely a female soprano. In fact, it might have been Anna Magdalena.
Oh, right. Oh, wow. Of
Yeah.
course. Because I was thinking some of those, like Faustini Bordoni,
Oh yeah,
the Dresden soprano.
the
Wouldn't it be
Dresden
great?
soprano.
I mean,
Yes.
I do wonder. I often wonder what Anna Magdalena sounded like. I should say, Ryan is married to one of my very, 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 very favorite sopranos, very favorite people, who happens to be a soprano and just such a great singer. And I do love that Bach family just singing around, sitting around and singing and playing together. So he would have known her voice inside out. Can you tell me how this Texas boy ended up doing all this Bach and ended up at Emmanuel?
Gosh.
What's that
Well,
journey?
so people have asked me what was my introduction to Bach, and when I was that's 8 or 9 years old, I sang in the El Paso Children's Chorus in El Paso, Texas, and we did that fantastic duet from Cantata 78,
Oh yes,
Via Island,
yeah,
but we did it with 25 treble voices,
yeah,
and I remember singing soprano in that and learning that, and we did it in English, of course.
yeah. It was in
Uh,
the Doreen Rao choral series.
exactly,
So
yes.
that piece standard rep for a
Yeah,
children's choir.
exactly. And that would have been probably like 1980, 1980, 1981
Yeah.
in West Texas.
And
And
that
then,
piece is so incredibly, like, it's perfect to introduce kids to for
oh,
Bach.
so incredibly joyful, and you
If
walk away
only all
singing
Bach
it.
sounded like that.
Exactly. Yeah. And then, but I sang, and I studied voice, but I was a cellist first and foremost.
Oh, I didn't actually know
Yeah.
that.
And I went to college to study cello.
I did not know that.
And I made it as a cello major for one whole semester, and had my cello teacher knock on the practice door one day, and I was singing. And the cello teacher said, you'll have better luck practicing if you take your cello out of the case. I wanted to sing.
Yeah.
That's what so I switched to becoming a voice major. So I did voice and theory at the Southern Methodist University in Dallas, Texas.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
great. Great. See,
But coming back to that same cantata, Jesu dir do meine Seele, Cantata 78, when I was a senior in college, I got asked to go to some Lutheran church to be a soloist. They were doing a cantata and they needed a tenor. And it was this cantata, Jesu der du meine Seele. And as you know, that tenor recitative, Ach, ich bin ein Kind der Sünden,
Yeah.
I'm a child of sin, and it's again one of those, like, self-flagellation, the second time I've used that term, texts. And I had no idea how difficult it was. I knew that aria. I was ready for the
Yeah.
aria, but not the recit.
Yeah.
And that was a very quick master class on what it was, how difficult Bach was, and what one had to do to be prepared to sing Bach. And it was humbling.
I think that more, it's funny you said that. It's one of the reasons why I love to hire Emmanuel soloists. Charlie Blandy was just our evangelist. More really very good singers have come ashore on the shoals of Bach recitatives because they just don't know. It's not like an opera recitative. Like it is its own little universe. Do you do, because I wanted to be sure that I asked about your Bach Institute at Emmanuel. And I wonder, do you guys do a lot of work with these young singers on how to sing recitatives?
It depends from year to year. Not this previous Bach Institute, but the one last year, 2025. We did a whole session on recitative and a master class on singing recitative. Yeah, it's a lot of work. And it's interesting. They come in really prepared on the arias and the recitatives, there's fear that they have. And they just need to, guide them through all the decisions you have to make. You know how that is.
Oh,
It's a
it's crazy.
But
And
that's the true excitement and joy of discovering these recitatives. Is I always feel like it's a blank slate. I mean, Bach gives you so much, but then what you can bring to it in terms of color and affect and phrasing is, the possibilities are endless.
so how did you get from SMU to
Ah,
Boston? What
well, I
was the
came to
journey?
Boston. I came to do my graduate work at the Boston Conservatory, and I thought I really wanted to be an opera singer. And my teacher at the time, his name is Bill Cotton. He still teaches there. He's in Boston still. Um, he at the time was singing in the choir at Emmanuel.
Oh, right.
He was a soloist and part of one of the tenors in the choir, and he gently, rerouted me away from the world of opera, and not necessarily away, but said, "Do you know about this other path you can take?" And I got connected with people at Handel and Haydn Society and started doing some more early music. And he told me about Emmanuel. And at the time, when I moved to Boston, the first job I got was to be the tenor in the choir at Church of the Advent, where they
Oh,
did,
right.
a Renaissance mass every week, professional choir with Edith Ho, fantastic musical experience. Um, and I knew about Emmanuel, and I always had in my head, oh, that's sort of where I'd like to be. And I remember it was the spring of 1997. I was on my way walking past Emmanuel to Church of the Advent in Beacon Hill, and Michael Beatty, who's still with us, was standing on the steps, and he said, "Hi, Ryan, how are you?" I'm like, and I kind of knew him. He said, "We're short a tenor. Where are you going? Do you want to sing with us this week?" And I said, "Oh gosh, I'd love to, but I have a job."
The gig.
I said, "But if you're serious," and then, anyways, I got a call from them a few weeks later that said, "Hey, we'd like to have you come full time to Emmanuel." And so I left to Advent, and that was in the fall of '97. I started singing at Emmanuel,
That
and
was really the zenith of Craig's. I mean, the program was already incredibly established by
mhm.
then. And so what were some of those great experiences that you had of the major
Oh gosh, I mean,
concerts?
I did every one of the big pieces with Craig, and and some big Handel works. I remember we did the Handel Israel and Egypt. We did the Handel Brachus Passion,
Yeah.
and just great stuff. And then it's interesting enough that I did come back to opera. In fact, with Craig, he did a series of the Del Ponte operas, and I got to be Ferrando and Così with Craig one
Oh,
summer
wow.
that we did at the Sci Center at BU. So yeah, I got about 8 good years with Craig when he was healthy,
Yeah.
and got to. I mean, felt like he was an unknowing mentor to me at the time because. Um, I've always said as a conductor, I learned more in the ensemble watching other conductors than I did in any conducting lesson or study I got of conducting. And so I felt like between singing with Craig and singing at H&H with Hogwood and Grant Llewellyn and all the other gigs that I got to do, you know, as a singer, as a soloist, or as an ensemble member, I had this intense years of sort of interning in a way that really framed and shaped so many of the decisions and things I do as a conductor now.
Have you enjoyed that shift? As I said, I knew you first as a really wonderful singer. Has it been an easy shift for you to be principally conducting these days? Do you wish you had time to sing more?
The only thing I mean, there are times I miss singing, but I've got my teaching, I've got my conducting, I have a wonderful wife and two kids, and so there's something had to go, and you know, and the lifestyle of a conductor is not necessarily compatible with the lifestyle of a singer.
Yeah.
The late nights of studying, and you take care of yourself in a different way than if you're singing. So, what I miss more than anything else is ensemble singing.
Oh, really?
Oh gosh, that to me was the greatest joy, was singing in an ensemble. Although last year, in a very last minute turn of events, we had a tenor that was sick and we were doing Fürchte dich nicht, the
Oh,
motet,
yes.
one on a part, so the double choir one on a part. And Michael Beatty was playing and I was going to be conducting. And it was Saturday morning rehearsal and he said, "We're down a tenor. Why don't you sing and we'll sort of lead together." And it was, what an incredible joy. It was so much fun to be back in there singing and kind of leading. Michael was leading. It was, very collaborative. It was great fun.
Hello, everyone, and please forgive me for interrupting, well, myself and Ryan in this conversation. I can't believe this was actually the first time that we have had a technical snafu and Zoom did not record the end of that conversation. It is very difficult to find a time for two busy conductors to meet. So instead of trying to finish it at another time or re-record, I just thought that I would break in. We talked as much about Bach as I had hoped to, and we're going to keep that just as a fresh conversation for you to see. And I just want to say, please do come to Assumption on Saturday, the 21st of February, so that you can hear these fantastic Bach cantatas, especially that 199, which is so perfect. And I would encourage you to just go explore the Emmanuel Music website, emmanuelmusic.org, so it's easy to find. Because what Ryan and I had talked about that didn't get recorded is how much else they do. The premiere of new works, this incredible motet commissioning project that Ryan and Emmanuel Music have done. They are more than Bach. They are so much more than Bach. But for the purposes of the complete Bach, that is really what we need them for, to be a full partner with us. So my thanks to Ryan for giving up his time. I hope that you enjoyed yet another ChatJSB, and I look forward the Bach Birthday Bash weekend around March 21st. Bach's birthday is coming, and I really look forward to seeing you then. Thanks, everybody.